I'm Rebecca Romaine.
The visitor here.
Hi, it's She-Hulk, aka Tatiana Maslany.
Check out Positronic Hypersonic.
Positronic Hypersonic.
Positronic Hypersonic.
What's up, nerds? So today I am being joined by my friend Barry from Positronic Hypersonic, and we are going to be discussing the series, The Skeleton Crew, because I don't think it's going to get picked up for season 2. And thank goodness. But Barry, you have a different take on the show, which I'm happy to hear and everything. So let's get started on talking about this nonsense. So you liked the show.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, that's not to say that I loved it.
Right on. Yeah. Which I do want to talk about that mindset. Okay, so real quick, if you guys didn't watch The Skeleton Crew, the premise is roughly 5 years after the fall of the Galactic Empire. 4 children end up on an adventure to make their way home after being lost in the galaxy following a discovery they make on their home planet at Aten while befriending a Force user. Which I have plenty of thoughts on that Force user and everything. Okay, so you had said that you didn't love the show. So
Right.
like on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you have given the show?
1 to 10 is a little tricky because it's such a wide range. But if we're doing 1 to 10, I would say 6. To put that another way, if we're doing 1 to 5, which is like what they do for movies and stuff, although I guess they do 1 to 10 as well. But anyway, on a 1 to 5 scale, I would say it's like a 3, which is, basic good. You get 1, the pits, 2, bad, 3, good, 4, very good, 5, perfect. I'm at a 3.
Right on. So very middle of the road.
Right.
See, my whole thing is I'm a very on the good parts of it, it's mid. So for me, it's like a 5, but the rest of it, it's like a 3. Like, I'm just like, ugh. So my biggest problem is, okay, so just making your point is like, I don't think that mediocre should be praised in any way, shape, or form. I'm all like, listen, it's mediocre. I'm not interested at all. If you can't step it up, then that's your problem. I also, and I want to talk about characters and the whole storyline and everything, but I just overall the show. Also, for me, when it comes to Star Wars, I have been personally let down by Lucasfilm as of late.
Yeah.
I don't really care for any of the shows. There's stuff that I like about some of the shows, but overall, I just don't like them. I think they're not very good. And then the movies have really let me down also. So I think that when it comes to Star Wars, I'm sorry, but it's Lucasfilm and Disney and Star Wars that have let me down so much that I went into this show thinking this is not going to be good. I'm like,
It's been very hit or miss.
Yeah, and
very hit or miss. We both didn't like Obi-Wan very much.
No, that was shit.
But then I loved Andor, and you didn't.
Well, the thing about Andor is, the thing I can respect Andor in the sense that I think the writing is really good. I think that the writing is top notch, and I think the acting is really good, top notch there. Like I give those 10 out of 10. So good. The problem with that is when I watch Star Wars, it needs to be a science fiction adventure show, and I didn't get that from that. It was way too in the politics of it, and like Andor, yeah. Like it took, like they were walking, like that one, I don't remember her name, Bex, I think it was. It took her like 5 minutes to walk through that little town, and I'm like, I do not need Lord of the Rings in my Star Wars where they're walking for hours. Just have her get there within a matter of seconds. Trust me, we understand. It takes a while to walk there. Yeah. So it was stuff like that. It was just the parts that were boring were like boring. I'm like, oh my goodness. But the parts that were good were solid.
Yeah.
So that's my problem.
I guess my approach is different, and it's not necessarily conscious. Maybe it's unconscious, but I find my approach tends to not sort of put it in a box and say, okay, I'm going to decide whether or not this is good or bad based on the Star Wars scale versus just is it good or bad. So I don't know if that's tripping you up.
Maybe. I mean, it could be.
I don't know if that's necessarily good or bad either. Maybe I should be evaluating it as Star Wars versus just a piece of media.
Okay.
And I couldn't swear to you that I've never done that with a piece of media where I've compared it to what it's supposed to be in this particular category. So when I say my approach is to not put it in a box, I've probably put things in a box at some
Right on. Yeah.
but like Star Trek. With Star Trek, and when it came to Discovery, I absolutely found a lot of fault with that show, not only because of what it was, but because of what it was supposed to be.
hmm
So I definitely put Star Wars Discovery in a box. I don't know. Maybe Star Wars. Maybe I'm more Trek than Wars, and so maybe I'm a little harder on Star Trek. But yeah, I don't know. I think what's tripping people up is they're putting, and it's not necessarily wrong or bad, but they're putting it in a Star Wars box. And so when you hold it up to what Star Wars is supposed to be, yeah, it's easier to find fault with it than it might otherwise be. I don't know.
Right on. Well, it is a Star Wars story, so I feel like if it's in the galaxy of Star Wars, I should be able to, compare and contrast and all that nonsense, and
Right.
just be like, okay. So all that being said, I just want to say, in terms of this show, I think that the kid characters, they suffered from flat arcs. I think that the parents were one note throughout the entire show. I think that the 3 middle episodes really didn't push the story along in terms of the ending, the finale, because they could have they really couldn't do more in that last episode than what they did. And they couldn't, they couldn't even hint at some of the answers to like the more interesting parts that I thought about were the show. For instance, Jude Law's character, his backstory, way more interested in that than anything going on in the rest of this show. I like literally, if they drop these kids off third episodes at Ad-Atten and then just told us about Jude Law and we just went on an adventure with him, way more interested in that.
Or have done them simultaneously with flashbacks or whatever.
Yeah, which I think that also is a failure of the show, in my opinion, because I think that the most interesting character, we barely got to know him, and I'm all like, and when we did the small piece of backstory that we did get with his, Jedi person, it was so short, and they told us, they didn't show us, which I'm all like, that's always a bad choice in my opinion. And then stuff like the great work, what was that? What, to make money? That was the great work? Come on, there's got to be more to it than that. There's got to be.
No, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So I just thought that the show really I think, for instance, I think there was also the part of the world breaking with Ad-Atten, because they were informed about Order 66, right? Which meant that the Republic / the Empire, they all knew about it all along, but yet everybody just all of a sudden forgot about it. Like, what's going on here?
I don't know if everybody knew. The AI knew.
Yeah. Well, I think that I personally think that I think at one point they had to have known. It had to be in their records. I just there are some things that I just question. Like I feel like, but I don't know. I feel like it does nail, some of the basics, when it comes to Star Wars and stuff like that, come to accept that and everything. I feel like if this represents modern Star Wars quality going forward, then I think that the franchise will be healthier, because like I said before, I have been let down in the past by Star Wars, their shows and stuff. And I also think that this should have been a movie. And I know I've mentioned it about the Goonies, and I know other people have, but I feel like if they would have sat down and made this movie or show into a movie and made it more like the Goonies, I do feel like it would have been successful, because I have a lot of problems with the character development and, the story arcs and everything. I just thought it was a little bit of a disaster, in my opinion.
What's crazy about that is if you knew me like in real life, I'm very often accused of being a pessimist and someone who looks on the the glass half empty side, which is surprising if you look at my reviews of this show, because I do not disagree with the things you just said. but for some reason, the stuff that was there struck me as good. Again, not great, good, and that's what carried over in my reviews. That's what um, dominated the notes that I took and the things that I said in my reviews was the stuff that I liked about it. I
Right
don't know.
on.
I don't know why that happened, but you're absolutely right that they could have told us more about Jude Law's character. And from what I'm reading, they, I think, shot some stuff that included the character that he talked about, the woman that found him,
Mm.
and then they cut it.
I would like to see that.
Yeah, like So
And-
I totally agree. They could have done more with that, and and Nick Frost as M33. Like I totally loved his character, and I would love to have seen stuff about what went on with his ship with the previous captain and all that. So when you say that stuff, it does resonate with me, and I totally get that.
Yeah, like when you brought up the Smee and his captain, I totally was like, the last 2 episodes, I was like, what happened to that guy? We saw the hologram of it.
Yeah.
We have no idea who he is, and now it's just, they're just like, okay, well, we told you a little bit of information. Goodbye. And I'm like, wait, what? What's going on here? This is ridiculous. It was like, I understand the concept of, and I do like the concept of, they would every episode go from planet to planet, get a clue, go to the next planet, get a clue, go to the next planet. But I did not feel any like when you watch and I'm just going to compare this to the Goonies because that's what I saw everybody comparing to from the first 2 episodes, and I was just like, I was like, get the fuck out of here with that noise. But I'm all like, the thing about the Goonies is, I never felt like these kids were in danger. Like, I'm like, I'm sorry, like, this is just some nonsense. And I do have to say that I do think that the children actors are bad at their craft. And I know you disagree with me. We'll talk about that in just a second. But I never felt like they were in danger like I did in the Goonies. Like when they're trying to play the little skull piano thing, whatever, and the bridge is collapsing, and they're all like, hurry up, play the fucking notes and everything. I'm all like, that was like super fun. But this, I'm all like, I do not feel like these children are in danger. And I felt like when they went to each planet, it wasn't as exciting as it could have been. Like when they went to that apocalyptic planet, what of a waste of 30 minutes. I was like, this episode sucked balls. It was bad. The only part you needed was that last 5 minutes. It was just ridiculous. And that's the whole thing. Like, I just felt like, but for me, when I went into my reviews, I just was like, I should have done when I watched it, reactions to when I watched it. Because I was just like every 5 seconds, I was like, oh, get the fuck out of here. What is going on here? Like, it was just like a bunch of that. And I was like, oh.
I know you said
go ahead.
the kids' arcs were kind of lame, and I said I didn't disagree with that. But at the same time, and this might sound completely contradictory, but at the same time, I think they did have arcs that had a beginning, a middle, and end. I think they wound up different than they were at the beginning, both interpersonally and individually. I thought there was forward momentum, and the parents were kind of one note because they didn't show them very much. But I think in the end, Fern's mother and Wim's father evolved, and
you think so?
May be that it may be that it was kind of surface and not very profound. But I think there was movement there. I think, for example, when Wim's father, in the beginning was very straight laced, very buttoned up, very we can't take any chances, very let's not rock the boat. And then in the end, and they kind of rushed it, but in the end, he's chasing them down to be like, get back here get off those bikes and get back here. You can't do what you're doing. And then he kept chasing them and ended up jumping the gorge. He was trying to get them, to go back, to stop. But after he jumped the gorge, he's like, that was exhilarating, kind of like, woo, and I thought he had a moment there where he sort of overcame his buttoned upness and his
boringness.
Right. And I think thereafter, then right after that, when they got to the ship and they realized the clamps were still on, instead of saying, well, that's it now, let's go home. We tried, he said, well, we've got to go get the power back on.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, You don't know you're dealing with a level 7 engineer. I was like, oh, I didn't realize we were dealing with such a badass over here, Wendell.
Level 6 would have been impressive, but you're level 7. No.
Yeah, level
So,
7.
but in that moment, he said, well, this won't do. We have to fix this. And he decided to be a different guy. And he, went with the kids. And then he, like, quote unquote, risked his life and faced down a lightsaber wielding force user in order to do what needed to be done. And, might have been a little sloppy and a little rushed, but I thought there was a definite evolution there for him. And then Fern's mother, she was kind of the same way, maybe even more so because she was like a government official. And then in the end, Fern says to her mom, yes, this is it. Because she didn't want to destroy we can't destroy the barrier. That's everything we've ever known. That's what's protecting us. We can't. And her mother was like, no, you don't understand. We have to destroy the barrier. And you have to understand that everywhere we've been, yes, it was scary. Yes, there were bad people, but there were also good people who were ready to help. And destroying the barrier is not going to be the end of the world. We have to do this. And that's when her mother realized that her daughter had seen some shit and that she needed to trust her daughter. And so, again, you could say it's kind of surface or rushed or sloppy, but I thought there was an evolution there where the parents sort of learned that this safe world they'd been living in was, first of all, had nerfed them. They were all nerfed as humans, nerfed beings, because all they had was this world where everything was, placid and peaceful and ordered. And they were sort of lulled into this sense of everything's fine all the time. And at the end, they realized, yeah, everything's not fine. And if we want to get back any sense of fine, we have to step outside our box. So I thought those characters evolved. I thought the kids, like I said, evolved both as a group interpersonally and as individuals. But there could have been a whole lot more, like you were saying. And the arcs were kind of surface. So I don't disagree with you at all there. I just found that what was there was good, not great. And not to drone on, but one thing I want to talk to you about before we're done is how the structure of the series affected all those things that you mentioned. Why we didn't get more Jude Law, backstory. Why we didn't get more the backstory of the robot and the previous captain. Why the characters' arcs were so surface. And I think it's because, for some reason, and I don't know if it would have been better as a movie, because even a movie is only 2 hours long. But if they were going to do a series, why only 8 episodes? And why only 35 minutes?
I agree with you.
They shortchanged themselves in that way.
I agree.
Why?
I don't know that either. Maybe there's a mandate by Disney because it's a supposed kid show. But I think it's a bad choice to make them shorter rather than longer.
I mean, didn't they do the same thing with Ahsoka and even Andor? And weren't they all short and only 8 episodes?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I honestly don't know. I think but I do think it's a bad choice.
It's crazy because I am now in the process of watching Daredevil, the original Netflix show. I didn't watch it when it was originally on. My wife did. And then the weird thing is I watched all the other shows after that. Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Defenders, whatever.
Right on.
I watched them all. I hadn't seen Daredevil. And so the new one coming, I said, I've got to go back and watch it. And I've been watching it. And I was shocked because there's 3 seasons. Each one is 13 episodes. And you have to remember, that's like 2018, 2019 when these were on. And so it's just interesting to me that, and of course, back before streamers were a thing, TV seasons on network TV were 25 episodes a season. So somewhere along the line, this mindset took over that less is more or less is better. And so even from just a few years ago with Daredevil, we went from 13 episodes and Star Trek Discovery from 15 episodes in 2017. Now 8 episodes of a show is a season. Like, I don't understand that. Like, Why are they doing that? Because they shortchanged themselves in exactly the ways that you said. I liked what was there, but at the same time, you're right that what wasn't there could have made it even better. And part of the reason I know that is true is because of the Daredevil show. I'm partway through the second season. The Daredevil show is an hour long, and each season, like I said, was 13 episodes, and it's excellent. And the only reason all that excellence was possible is because they didn't short shrift it to 8 episodes, and they didn't do them in half-hour bits. So I absolutely take your point that it could have been something more than it was. My whole thing with liking it, and to be fair to you, I don't think I realized that quite as much as I do now, because I've been watching Daredevil, and it reminded me how a show can be when it's longer and more episodes. And then it really hit me home about how they could have done so much more with Skeleton Crew. I liked what was there, but you're absolutely right that it could have been more. And Daredevil is an example of that. And I kind of want to point the finger at these companies and say that the reason they're doing these short bursts now is because they are trying to, I think, put as many different shows as possible out in order to bring in subscribers.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's funny because they're poking themselves in the eye at the same time, because like we were saying at the beginning, half the fandom wasn't satisfied with this show.
Mm-hmm.
And if part of that is due to how short it was, then they're not doing themselves any favors with that strategy. So it's so strange.
I agree. I also, that goes back to the whole thing. I think that this should have been a movie, because I think that when you do tighten yourself up to a 2-hour block, you get rid of all the nonsense. I also think that Disney Plus, I understand that, like you said, they do want subscribers, and I get that. I get that whole deal. But the problem with a TV show, for instance, like this one, and putting it in movie theaters, more people are willing to just turn it off and walk away than they are to walk out of a movie theater. And I think that that's what these shows like this suffer from. Also, I agree with you. They should have made these episodes longer. And if they were going to make them 20, 30 minutes long, they should have added more episodes, because they could have done a complete one episode that just dealt with all of Jude Law's character. I mean, we didn't get to hear about like what happened with him in Pocket. Pocket shows up, which I'm getting really annoyed that Star Wars keeps doing this. They keep getting these like really good actors, and they plop them in these like stupid roles that like take like 2 seconds. Like it's like, that actress was there for like a day tops, and it's like, you get these really interesting things like that, like Pocket. You're all like, okay, listen, I'm not huge into Pocket, but I would like to hear what happened between them. Brutus, I thought Brutus was really interesting, the werewolf man. I thought he was interesting. I mean, they killed him, but whatever. And it's just this show. Okay, so going back to this show, I just think that this show, like I said before, is mediocre, and for me that doesn't get a pass. It's got kids in it. It doesn't get a pass. I don't care if it was made for kids. Kids aren't watching it. Barely anybody's watching it, because it's apparently the lowest rated show.
Worse than Acolyte, they're saying.
Yeah. And I just go, I'm sorry, but it's very obvious that this show either A, shouldn't have been made, or B, they should have just maybe they could have gotten a tax write-off like Warner Brothers has, because they didn't they hadn't advertised it. They did, obviously, at one point in time. So I want to talk about these kids and how you think they're good actors, because I do not think they're good actors. I think they're terrible. One thing that I saw a lot of people and I would get into arguments with people about, is they would compare them. I got a lot, comparing it to the Goonies or whatever. And I one time I was on, I believe it was a stream, and I had said there's Haley Joel Osment, Macaulay Culkin. We get all these great kid actors, and you're telling me Disney has access to all these up and coming Disney stars, and you can't find 1 or 4 good kid actors. And I remember one person saying, well, a Haley Joel Osment is 1 in a million. I'm all like, but if you look at, because everyone wanted to compare it to the Goonies, look at the Goonies. All 4 of those fuckers were good. And I'm sorry, they were really good actors. Loved them. And they, you know, they were charming. They were a little annoying. They were, you know, they were way more kids than I think these kids are. I saw a lot of people saying like Wim, like that's how kids act. I'm sorry. I don't know what kind of kids these people are raising. My children do not act like these children, not one fucking bit. Like, you know, it's, I'm like, I don't know where you're seeing these children. They like, they don't talk like this. Like, this is obviously adults writing children the way adults see children. I'm all like, oh, this is not real life, in my opinion.
I think, I mean, I've definitely seen bad child actors. Like, I thought the girl that they had playing Leia in Obi-Wan was horrible.
Yeah, she sucked.
She was terrible.
Yeah.
So on that scale, I thought these kids were, you know, passable. I thought they were okay. They're not Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah, but it's
great.
passable. Why is passable getting a free pass now? I don't understand that. Why are we not rampaging against this show to say this? We are not going to accept mediocre anymore. We are done. We've had enough. Your show is bullshit. Get the fuck out of here. Don't bring this to the table anymore, because I'm not going to have a bite of it. I do not want this. Don't bring it anymore. Like, I don't understand why people, especially these Star Wars nut huggers out there, these little shills, why they praise this bullshit, and they gave it like a 10 out of 10. I'm all like, you got to be fucking kidding me with this bullshit. Like, I just, for me personally, I just don't understand why it is that we can't, especially the people that are getting pretty much paid by Disney and Star Wars, Lucasfilm, why they can't just be honest with themselves and with the rest of the people around them that this is not good. And we shouldn't accept this anymore. Like, we should say, no, enough's enough. You've given us shit. I'm tired of eating shit. Okay. I'm done. I am done.
You know, I can get behind that to an extent. I think there's value in saying this was not excellent and we would like some excellence, please. But what I'm trying to nail down, just so maybe I can understand, when you say, and I know you gave me a number before, but when you say not good, like, when I say 1 to 5 and I say 1 is the pits, 2 is pretty bad, 3 is good, 4 is very good, and 5 is excellent. You're saying you're a 2 or a 1?
Yeah, a 2. Yeah. Yeah, like 3 at best. Like, there are times when I'm like, oh no, that's interesting. Like I said before, like, for instance, the very first scene of the first episode. I know a lot of people were like, oh, they just copied the first scene from A New Hope, and I'm like, I get it. You know, you take what's, you know, good, and you just, I get that part. And I thought that when the pirate ship attacked that Republic ship, I thought that was a good scene. There are very, very few instances in this show where I go, oh no, that was pretty good. I liked that. And I can't think of any off the top of my head because I wasn't expecting to think of it. But like, other than that, I'm just like, this show is just fucking dog shit, yo. Like, I mean, like, which I hate. And I've said it to you. We've talked before, but I've said this before in my videos that I'm jealous when people can go into this and love it. But at the same time, I go into this, and at the end of the episode, I just go, well, that wasn't good. And I can't help it. I think what I think. And I'm like, I'm like, And like you said, maybe it is biased a little bit just because I have been burned so many times by Star Wars. Right. But at the same time, I go, it doesn't matter how many times I've been burned. I still think that this was not that great.
And I don't diametrically oppose that view. I just happen to think that it was, let's say, mediocre. And you know, I guess what I'm failing to do is I'm failing to complain about mediocre. In other words, I'm sort of just kind of taking it, and that might be a failing on my part. And I think it's possible that I've been, I don't want to say burnt, but in other words, Obi-Wan was so bad.
Yeah, it was.
And that this, to me, being mediocre, was like, well, thank goodness. Thank goodness it was mediocre. And the end, I thought that the acting in Acolyte was terrible. I didn't hate that show like a lot of people hated it, but watching it, I was like, and I think I said in my reviews, these are like the Temu Jedi. This is like Jedi from Wish.
Right.
Or Jedi from, I think, no, you know what I said in my reviews? These are Jedi from a Star Wars fan film.
Mm-hmm.
The acting, I thought, was on that caliber, and the writing was on that caliber. And that's one of the things that made that show not great, was that it felt like I was watching a well-funded fan production and not a billion-dollar studio production. So when something comes along that tops that, like even a little bit, I find it hard to say bad things.
I get it.
You know what I'm saying? And it goes beyond Star Wars. Madam Web was so bad.
So bad.
I mean, that was, I think, one of the things I said in my and the same thing about the one that we reviewed with your sister, the Under Paris.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about that. That movie had so much dumb in it.
So much dumb.
And Madam Web had so much dumb in it that it for me, that's, in other words, like this show, again, if we say mediocre, middle of the road, when I say I feel that way about it, it's because I didn't find an abundance of dumb. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Where if I had found an abundance of dumb, like there was in Obi-Wan, an abundance of dumb, it's not at all difficult to talk about the dumb. So when there's dumb, I find it easy to criticize. When there's no dumb, I find it harder to criticize. And
I get that.
The point I'm trying to make is that Hollywood has a problem in that they're putting out a lot of dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that's doing, and like we've been saying, the Star Wars fandom is divided on this. A lot of people liked it. Some of the people say they loved it. Some people hated it. And I think that's because we're in a media landscape now where there's very little stuff that's excellent. I mean, that's just true. There's excellent movies, there's excellent shows, but very few. And I guess that's sort of normal. Like, not everything is going to be a 10. But there's so much stuff that's just half-baked now that it's easy to find something that's a little less half-baked and sort of like it.
Right on.
It's just a crazy thing where, like, why is there so much dumb stuff that we end up falling for the mediocre? That's what's crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the thing about it is, I do like that you went in and you found the things that you liked and you were like, I'm going to talk about those things. Because I am a pessimist. I'm not
No.
I try not to be, but it's like it sneaks in. I can't help it. But yeah, like when I watched this show, I was like, and the good things about it, like I did like the Brutus character, but I'm all like, oh, they didn't use him very much, and like they really didn't have to, and it's like, but it was like. Also, I think that what I didn't like about this show is, okay, so when you have, like, for instance, when you have this wasn't a murder mystery, but this was like a find a clue, figure out the clue kind of thing. The thing about this show is it didn't let you play along. Like, it was like you like, you're all like, oh, okay, what's good? Because like I feel like the end result should have been like, we should have been able to guess who the supreme leader was. I mean, like, I was like, oh, it's gonna be Hal 9000. Watch, it's just gonna be Hal, and I'm like, and it was, and I was like, this is fucking bullshit. And like, they didn't even explain how Hal got made or whatnot. And like, I was all like, okay, maybe the captain, the pirate captain, will figure out how to put his consciousness into a machine, and then that would be what it was. Nope, that wasn't it. And they didn't explain it. I was like, okay, Jude Law, I was like, he survived Order 66. They're going to show that. Nope, he didn't survive Order 66. They didn't show none of that. Ad-Adden. I was like, okay, Ad-Adden is not a, it's a treasure planet, but, and it was, that part was true. But I was like, but, the great work is this big, like, not a Death Star kind of thing, but it's gonna somehow be able to, like, attack planets and destroy them, but in a different way. Kind of like, oh, what was the name of that prod? There's a video game, I can't remember the name of it, but they sent these little beams down to the planets and destroyed the planets or whatnot. It's a pretty good movie. Anyways, they just abandoned all these things, and for me, I just go, when we get to the final point, I should be able to play along and guess with you on what's what. And I don't feel like we got any of that bullshit. When it comes to the characters, yeah, they did. And I think you had told me one time that they did have movement in their character development, because I had said there's no character development. And you were right. They did have movement forward in their character development because they're moving from stage to stage. But when I say I'm going to take KB for instance, or I like to call her Jodie LaForge. The thing about her is okay. So and I'll compare her to Data from the Goonies. When we see Data at the beginning, we understand that he creates things. Like he creates all these inventions, and we saw that from the first scene he's in. He creates that little zip line from his house to his neighbor's house, and he's all like, pita pow, and everything. And then like later on, we see he creates oil shoes. With this little girl, I didn't get like she's all like, we're gonna need to fix your bike, but we're gonna need a reactor. And I'm all like, okay, but she didn't fix the bike. She just told us what was wrong with it. I'm like, okay, that's great. And then she's on that ship, and I'm all like, and I don't even think she fixed the ship. Didn't Fern hit the engine, and that's what boosted it up and everything? I don't remember off the top of my head. I can't remember, but I want to say that's what happened. So and like Wim, I'm all like, what was his I'm just like I said before, it's they're flat character arcs, and for me personally, they just led nowhere. Like the rest of this show, like I'm like Wim at the beginning, he wanted to be a Jedi and go on an adventure. Yeah, he went on an adventure, but at the end, you're just like, okay, like what a boring fucking like story arc. Like I don't care about you, Wim. I think you're a loser. So whatever.
Do you think maybe they were thinking in terms of a second season? In other words, when they mapped this all out, do you think they consciously sidestepped all these things that we're talking about that they could have put in it that they didn't because they were thought, okay, we're going to save that for season 2?
The only thing that I think that they could have saved for season 2 was Jude Law's story, because the rest of I don't think that if you make a season 2, I don't understand how you would incorporate these kids. Like these kids are boring. Like they're so stupid. And like, I mean, like they're just, I just personally, and I have no interest in, I don't not care where these characters go in the future. I don't care about anybody on the show except for Jude Law's character. He's the only one that I'm somewhat interested in hearing about / seeing again. I don't care about this Kim, the little owl creature. I don't care about any of those damn pirates. I don't care about, I don't even care about Pocket. Like I'm all like, listen, Pocket came and gone. Pocket can, suck it. I do not care. I just personally, like, this show was so like one note that I'm just like, I literally like, and I think that that's bad when nobody cares about your show, and I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask you that is because there's another trend in, I don't know if it's a big trend, but there's a sort of trend in Hollywood or whatever, in movie making and TV show making, where a lot of things that we get that come out are intended as part 1.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they announce it, like with Dune and Wicked, and sometimes they don't. And you're supposed to, and like with, again, going back to Madam Web, there's a whole bunch of, they introduced a whole bunch of stuff in the marketing for that movie and within the movie itself that isn't part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole movie ends up being an origin story. And at the end you go, well, if that was a setup for a part 2, it wasn't bad. But as a self-contained movie, it was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think even when they sort of announced it, okay, this is part 1, Dune part 1 kind of left me going, okay, maybe when I see the second part, I can judge the 2 parts as a whole and I'll like it better. But as a part 1, the standalone movie, didn't like Dune 1. Same thing for Wicked for me. So I don't know where that comes from. Is that a money grab? So I don't know if they're trying to franchise everything, and if they're on this kick in Hollywood where they don't want to tell the whole story in one go because that doesn't lend itself to, milking it.
Which I think I think you should always assume you're never going to get another season of something, and you put all your eggs in one basket. That's because because if you can't come up with a more interesting story after your season 1 and you've laid out all your cards, then I just go, well, then maybe you shouldn't have made a story in the first place if you can't come up with new ideas and you're very one note. So, but I think that this show is one note, so I don't think they had a plan for any of this bullshit. I think that they had a skeleton crew of a story and they went with it, and then they wrote all this nonsense in here and just had the lamest of shit go on, and it just ended up, I'm sorry, but I consider this show a complete flop in my opinion. Like, it's like, and I hope that we never see any of these, maybe Jude Law's character again, but other than that, I don't care to see any of these characters again. And I don't think after today I'm going to talk about this show ever again because this show has wasted so much time.
Yeah, it's forgettable. I mean, it's again, I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was a 3 out of 5. I liked it, but I couldn't tell you that it's some memorable show that's going to stick with anybody.
Right.
So I get that.
Right on.
I think we've reached more of a détente.
Right. I agree. I mean, maybe in the future I'll change my mind. I doubt it, though. I doubt it. And maybe if my children ever get interested in Star Wars, maybe they'll want to visit this show.
Yeah.
But my children have zero interest in Star Wars, and I don't see them changing their mind in the future. Yeah. Okay. Did you want to say anything else? We'll wrap it up and everything. But did you want to say anything else about the Skeleton Crew?
No, I think it was a good show, but not very good and not less than good. And I think part of that had to do with the corporate machinations that we'll never fully understand, because like we were saying, they short shrifted it in terms of number of episodes and length of episodes. And so there was so much that could have been there that wasn't. And I'd love to understand that thought process someday, and whether or not they put themselves in a box where they were thinking of a second season. I'd love to know more behind why they made these choices, but we're not going to know. But ultimately, mediocre though it was, it's forgettable, and there you go. But I'm glad we had this talk, because I think we're a lot closer on this than I thought we were.
Right on. Yeah,
if I'm a 3 and you're a 2, the gap's not that wide.
Not that wide. Oh, goodness. Well, you start walking your way, I'll start walking mine, and we'll meet at my opinion.
Sure.
All right, you guys, we're going to wrap this sucker up. Barry, tell everybody where they can find you at.
I am on the Twitter, which I refuse to call X, under Positronic Hypersonic, and on YouTube under the same.
Right on. And I will leave links to all of his stuff down below so you guys can check him out. He has really fun reviews. If you're more interested in the positive side of Skeleton Crew, I suggest watching that stuff. I personally am not. So, well, I mean, although I did watch your reviews.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to leave all your comments in that section down below. If you like this video, go and hit that like button. I won't mind. If you're new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I'd greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on our next video. You guys have a good day. Bye.